Welcome to Ask the Superintendent, a podcast created to have a candid conversation with the superintendent and his leadership team based on your questions. We know your child's education at Little Elm ISD matters, and it is important for you, our community, to have access to the information you need by asking important questions to the leaders who make decisions. The topics we discuss are endless, but very important. Our vision is to become the destination district by building great schools, great community, furthering education, one question at a time. Hey everybody, Cecelia Jones, Director for Communication here for Little Elm ISD. Today we're going to be discussing 4-day week. And in the room with me is the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Learning, Dr. Penny Tramel, and our Executive Director for Human Resource Services, Miss Asheley Brown. Thanks for joining us. This is a very important topic. We know that our community is very interested, not just our community of parents, but our community of staff as well. So before we get started, I want to propose a question to you, which I think is the big question, and that is, why is the district, Dr. Tramel, considering a 4-day week?
Great question. Well, the board asked us to investigate a 4-day week, and quite frankly, when we started, we didn't really know what we would find. But as we talked to districts who've implemented a 4-day week, read a lot of articles and information out there about a 4-day week, and then actually visited with some of the superintendents and districts that have implemented the 4-day week, we began to see potential benefits to seriously considering a 4-day week calendar. For instance, superintendents were reporting higher attendance rates in teachers and students, fewer substitutes needed, so teachers were in the classrooms more with the kids, so the learning time was very focused and high quality. They reported fewer discipline incidences because of that focused learning time, the ability to have flexible scheduling, and look at maybe some acceleration during the day, enrichment opportunities during the day, just a variety of reasons. More family time was one that one of the superintendents reported his parents reporting back to him that they were enjoying. So just a variety of reasons. I think one of the big reasons that stood out as well was the whole idea of retention and recruitment. And I'll let Ms. Brown speak a little bit to that, because we've both researched and compared notes and came up with the same things.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for having me as part of the podcast. I'm excited. So recruiting and retention is a huge reason, I think, when thinking and considering a 4-day week. We know for a fact that school districts are competing now more than they ever have before for the best teachers, the most talented educators, because there is a national shortage of educators. People are, for various reasons, choosing to leave the profession, and then also we have universities that just aren't producing as many educators as they once were. So we're in this kind of period where we really have to do as much as we can to get the best of the best. And one of the things when I reached out to some districts about benefits and disadvantages and how is it going for you that have implemented the 4-day week, they, without hesitation, without pause, raved about how it's benefited their recruiting, how their applicant pools that were once very shallow have increased in depth tremendously, like several times over. They've had much more quantity of candidates and then much more quality of candidates as well. I would say not only in applicant pools did they report were better, but like just filling positions. The districts that I spoke to reported no vacancies, which is kind of almost unheard of in today's education world. So recruiting and retention, and I will say, that compensation is something that educators look at for sure when they're deciding what place they're going to make their professional home. The culture, the environment is something that they look at, but also environments or places that they can work where they can try to have some semblance of work-life balance. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that the districts who have implemented it have heard from their new hires, that they want to work in a district where they have a 4-day week, so that they can have more time with their families and that kind of thing. So it's definitely viewed by educators at large as a benefit and something that they're interested in.
So you talked about it being a national shortage. So let's localize that. What does that look like for Little Elm? Like, what are we currently experiencing?
Very good question. So we do currently have some vacancies that we're still trying to fill, and we do have some candidates that have applied, but we certainly would love to have many more than in our applicant pool than we currently do. We across the board, there's a couple of elementary vacancies and some at the secondary level as well. So we do everything we can, obviously, to recruit them, talk about how wonderful of a district this is, what a beautiful area it is, like kind of all of those things. But I think one of the advantages that districts that have a 4-day week are able to also use when they're recruiting the very same people that we're trying to, is this kind of flexibility in schedule and more time with family. So I think, yes, absolutely, what we're seeing on the national level, we're seeing in Little Elm as well. Mm-hmm. And it's a struggle, and really kind of any advantage is always beneficial.
Well, and you hear too, and we're no stranger to it either, is teachers are choosing to leave the profession. And so that retention piece is so important. And what can we do as a school district to make sure great teachers don't leave the profession?
Yeah, I would add to what we were talking about here. COVID really kind of changed the game as well for the workforce. Mm-hmm. With the COVID pandemic, when kind of the world shut down, and corporations, especially in the private sector, were able to offer working from home and working remotely. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, like, corporations that were never having a work from home as an option were. And so people started to get a taste for that and started to get a feel like, wow, working from home is an option in a lot of these private sector jobs. And so, you know what, maybe this really difficult job of teaching, bit rewarding but difficult, is not so much for me. Maybe I ought to go over to this private sector and try to work some of these jobs that are work from home, that are remote. So we're having to compete not only with other districts, right, but also now with like the private sector, sure, that has this work remote, this work from home piece that we're unable to offer just because, right, of the nature of our work.
Right. And really, I mean, the work that teachers do, you'll hear them say it's not about the money. Mm-hmm. It's really not about the money, but it's more about what kind of impact can I have on kids. But exactly, adding that maybe that extra day for them to plan, or just to take a mental break could help, mm-hmm, keep them from leaving. This has been a strategy that we've read. I think this has been around for a couple of years. We're seeing, mm-hmm, rural districts really move toward this model, and which makes sense because they need to recruit the same teachers we're trying to recruit, and so they've got to do things to make it more enticing. So we've heard some districts that are doing it right now. Can you name some that that are already doing the 4-day?
Mm-hmm. So Jasper ISD, Mineral Wells ISD. I mean, there's a whole list. The superintendent for Mineral Wells said, there were 3 districts around him implementing the 4-day week. He didn't intend to at all, but then they started having teachers resign to go to these other districts. And then when he was having dialogue with those superintendents, he was hearing how their applicant pools were increasing, and they were able to fill all their positions and fill them with quality people. So there are well over 100 districts across the state, according to the information that I have. Mm-hmm. And then many considering it. It started out as a small district kind of initiative, more to help get teachers in the classrooms with the children. And it's kind of growing. They're actually some 5A districts considering it. And I know Little Elm is 6A, but 5A is not far behind us.
Right.
Districts like Kaufman, Athens, Terrell. The rumor mill has it that Terrell is 90% on the way to a 4-day week.
So it sounds like they're probably in the same timing as us. They're exploring, they're considering it, and maybe asking the community how they feel.
Right.
So we've heard from the community, and there's this is innovative. This is out of the box thinking, and and that's how school is moving. I think you mentioned COVID has kind of changed the landscape, not just in the corporate world, but in the education world too. So how do we keep moving forward? And I think this is out of the box innovative thinking. So what does a school day, what would it look like if we did move to a 4-day?
So I think when we consider a calendar for a school district, first and foremost, we have to think about student performance and the health and well-being of students and teachers. And we know in Little Elm ISD, we are working very hard so that our students are highly successful. So we definitely want to keep that at the core of thinking about a calendar. So when you think about a typical school day and you think about 4 days versus 5 days, then you have to be very intentional with how you use that time. One of the things that some of the superintendents have said is we are finding our teachers are very intentional and our kids are very intentional with the 4 days they have, but they're more rested, they're more focused and ready to kind of hit the road running. But we do see more of a constructivist style of learning, more inquiry-based learning, more hands-on learning, more dialogue and discourse in classrooms with the learning as kids wrestle with issues and comprehension things and come to resolution and better understanding of concepts being taught. In a 4-day week, we would typically see kids taking more ownership of their learning, like having clarity of what do I need to learn and how am I going to do it?
Right.
And teachers being able to scaffold and enrich. We are proposing, a little bit of an increase in our day, potentially 30 minutes. Okay. And with that time, though, there's so much opportunity for greater flexibility of job-embedded learning, of enrichment and scaffolding in the school day for kids through 12th grade.
Right. And I've got a couple of more questions. I think it's important for the community to hear that putting together an academic calendar isn't just it's not just to do it in a couple of hours and it's done. There's actually a lot of things to consider. Yes. Talk about, because you developed the calendar, talk about, what does it take?
Yeah. So we always have to meet state guidelines, right? And so the state says that a school calendar needs to have 75,600 minutes in it. And so that's first and foremost, non-negotiable. And then we start to look at things like contractual days. We have employees on different, contractual cycles. We have NCTC that we work very closely with. We look at the state testing calendar. For instance, on the calendars, the District Education Improvement Council, and I refer to it as the DEIC, is looking at on Easter weekend, or the weekend Easter is celebrated. The Good Friday would be an off day, but we don't have that Monday off, and we don't have that Monday off on either calendar because English STAR exam is on Tuesday. So to be off on the Monday is not what is best for children. Right. So we consider those kinds of things. We get feedback from different departments. We consider feedback from previous calendars. An example of that would be the fall break. We have had, feedback that families enjoyed that fall break and teachers enjoyed having a bit of a break in the fall. So that was kind of one of the things we wanted to keep, especially in calendar B, which is more the traditional calendar. So you'll see some of those things, get out before Memorial Day is feedback that we've had.
Yeah.
So we consider all of that.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's really a collaboration with a lot of people around the table. Ashley Brown being one of them, because she oversees those contractual days and makes sure everybody gets to work those days. And then we want to talk about just our approval process with a calendar. Once you've developed a calendar, this is not just something that the district looks at and says, that's the one we're choosing. For years, we've tweaked it. The DEI looks over it. They take that back to the campuses for input. They bring it back as DEIC meets, and then they finalize that calendar, and then they push this out to the community for a vote. Why is it so important that we obviously that's a question I already know the answer to, but we do push this out for the community for a vote. But there's something different that we're doing this year that we didn't do in previous years, because I'll say it again, this calendar is different than what we've presented before.
Right. So the process quick and fast is we developed some draft calendars with some of the things we've previously talked about. We take those calendars to DEIC. They give input. They look at them. In fact, we made a change on one of the calendars before it was sent out to the DEIC to get input from the staff this year, based on feedback at that meeting. And then they are garnering that input. They will bring it back to the meeting that we have next week. Some of them have already sent me some of that input, so there are some potential changes that will be happening based on what the DEIC decides. And then they will vote to put calendars out for public input. This year we have added commentary because we do want to hear from our parents. And at the end of the day, the parents vote and on the calendars, and then we share that with the DEIC as well as the commentary. Make any changes that might need to be made that the DEIC would feel like need to be made, then vote to recommend a calendar forward to the board, because our Board of Trustees is the final decision making on our academic calendar.
All right. So we have also designed frequently asked questions for staff and parents. You can find that on our website. We hope this podcast has been informative. If you have any questions, you can always email communications@LittleElmISD. But for now, look for an email from the district that would include FAQs and a link to this podcast, so you can learn more about the decision behind presenting a 4-day week to the community. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.